say go. Today we're going to make some homemade guacamole and baked pita chips. The ingredients we're going to need for this week's recipe are 2 avocados, a small onion finely chopped, 1 clove of garlic minced, a ripe tomato chopped, 1 lime, salt and pepper, and then we'll also need 4 pitas, 2.5 tablespoons of olive oil, half a teaspoon of garlic powder and pepper, 1 teaspoon of dried basil, and 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. There are a few other things from around the kitchen we're going to need to get this recipe completed, and those include a knife, a cutting board, a small mixing bowl, forks, kitchen scissors, and a baking sheet with tinfoil. Go ahead, grab everything you need, and then meet me back here so we can get started. So let's start with our guacamole. The first thing we need to do is cut open our avocados. So avocados have a pit inside, which means that your knife will only go halfway through. You can easily just pull your pit out. And then we're just going to take that inside flesh and put it into our small mixing bowl. Make sure you scrape out as much as you can. Pretty easy. Now we need to do the same thing with our second avocado. So slice all the way around, open it up. Another pit that we're going to take out. And I'm going to do my best to just squeeze as much of the flesh out this time, because it's okay to get messy. Whew. Alright, there are my 2 avocados in the bowl. I'm going to wash my hands. And now we can go ahead and use our fork to mash our avocado up. We want to mash it until it's nice and smooth. This might take a little bit of work. Now, depending on the age of your children, this could be a task that you have them complete while you do all of the chopping and mincing. Keep on mashing. So now it's time for our garlic, and we're just using 1 clove. The easiest way to get the skin off of the garlic is to take a large bladed knife and gently press over top. The skin will then peel right off. Now it's time to mince this up. I'm going to slice it very carefully, keeping my fingers out of the way. Now I'm going to take my bigger knife. This is how I mince my garlic. So I'm holding the tip of the knife still and steady at one end, and then I'm just moving the hand that's holding the handle back and forth. Keep on mincing. We want to make sure that our garlic is tiny, tiny pieces. And I'm just going to move that part over to the side of my cutting board. Now it's time for our onion. The recipe says 1 small onion. I don't think this is very small, so I'm just going to get started with a section of it. I'm going to peel off that first layer of onion. There we go. Now I'm going to cut this section in half, and I'm going to start out with this small chunk. It's always easier to add more of something into your recipe than it is to try and take it out. Remember to keep those fingers out of the way. I'm going to use the same strategy to chop my onions. One hand steady on the tip, while the hand that's holding the handle moves its way back and forth across the cutting board. Keep on chopping until you get the size that you prefer. Now our avocado is looking nice and smooth, so we can go ahead and add our garlic and onion into the bowl. Now it's time for this ripe tomato. Make sure you've given it a good rinse. I'm going to just cut off the top and then cut around the edges. The tomatoes, we just want to chop them up, so you can really leave them whatever size you prefer. Guacamole can be done with a fresh tomato. I've also seen it done with canned tomatoes as well, if you happen to have a can in the pantry, but not a ripe tomato, you could go ahead and swap those out. It is way more fun to practice our cutting and chopping with a real tomato though. Now it's time to really get our hands working. Cut your lime in half and then start squeezing it because we want to get all of the juice into the bowl as well. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Now I've got everything I need, so I'm going to stir and mix this up. Once everything is mixed, we're going to cover it and place it in the fridge to chill. Next, we'll need to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. We've got to get working on those pita chips. So tidy up your workspace, preheat your oven, and then we'll work on our pita chips. The first thing we're going to do is make the dressing for our pita chips. We're going to start out by adding our olive oil into this small little bowl that I have here. We're going to use 2.5 tablespoons of olive oil. Now we're going to add in our garlic powder. Half a teaspoon. Go ahead and sprinkle that on top of the oil. Do you see anything happening yet? Half a teaspoon of pepper. Our dried basil, it's 1 teaspoon. And then we're going to add in 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. And I'm going to pour it over my cutting board because I don't want too much. I'm going to sprinkle that in, and then with this little whisk, I'm just going to mix everything up. If you don't have a tiny little whisk, you can still use your fork. Stir, stir, stir. There, that's done and ready. Now for our pitas. I've got a large Ziploc bag here, and I've got a clean pair of kitchen scissors. So what we want to do is start cutting our pitas. I'm going to start by cutting this one pita in half so that we have 2 pieces. We're trying to get 8 pieces out of our one pita. So now I'll cut my halves in half again. Now we've got 4 quarters of our pita, but we need 8 pieces. So what are we going to do? Maybe we should cut our quarters into halves. What do you think? Is this going to give us 8 pieces? Let's see. 1 into the bag, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It worked! Yes! Now we're just going to do the exact same thing with the rest of our pitas. So again, we're going to cut the pita in half, and then cut those halves into halves, so we have quarters, Now we'll cut our quarters into half to make eighths. Fantastic. Keep on cutting. Once you have all of your pita cut, put it into the bag. Give your oil mixture a little stir. Now what we're going to do is add some of this oil mixture into our bag. I don't want to pour all of it in right away because I want to try and make sure it's pretty evenly dispersed. So I'm going to pour about half into the bag to get started. Now make sure you zip up your bag and that it's closed, and now shake, shake, shake. You're just going to keep on shaking to try and get as much of that pita coated in the oil mixture as possible. This side doesn't really have any of those seasonings, so let's add the last half into the other side. Again, make sure you get your bag completely zipped and continue to shake. Once you feel as though your pitas have been coated evenly, you can grab your baking sheet covered in tin foil and transfer your pita slices from your bag onto the baking sheet. Now, when it comes to the baking sheet, you don't have to put them on in a fancy way. You just want to make sure that they're separated a little bit, but if they're lying on top of each other, that's okay too. Once you've got all of your pita chips laid out on your baking sheet, we're going to then place those pita chips into the oven and bake for around 8 to 10 minutes. We want to leave them in long enough so that they're slightly browned. We'll remove them from the oven and let them cool. Then we're going to serve them immediately, or we can go ahead and store them in an airtight container. Grab some of that fresh guacamole out of the fridge now that it's nice and chilled, and there you have your homemade guacamole and baked pita chips. We hope you enjoyed this week's recipe, and until next time, Ona!